Okay, go ahead, Peter.
All right, looking, I see it. Okay. Before we get started, hi everyone. The notice at the beginning of the meeting is that this meeting may involve the remote participation by members either by telephone or other electronic means due to the local public health emergency novel coronavirus pandemic pursuant to the provisions of Minnesota statutes section 13D.021. That is it. Hello and welcome all. This is the October Programs and Policies Subcommittee meeting of the Minneapolis Pedestrian Advisory Committee. I am Peter Vader, co-chair of this committee. Julia Curran is also here, the other co-chair. And we've got an agenda of four items today. And two of them may merge a little bit, but Millicent has collected the attendance.
I will.
All right.
While we're conducting the meeting.
All right, got my notes here for the first first item, and welcome everyone. I don't know that we have any of these items will today be generating a resolution, but want to think about what our next step might be on any one of these. None of these is really, I don't know that any of them are calling out for resolution action today, though that may become the case. But there's a few of these that I just like people to be thinking about what next steps, other than if not a resolution, what would be good next steps, as we tackle Stay Healthy Streets and our CFA PAC priorities, winter maintenance, and any climate breakdown follow up on the IPCC resolution. And we'll start, if everyone's ready, with the first item is there with the Stay Healthy Streets, including rapid flexibility on that topic name. I requested this item, or I've been bringing it up, and I sent out a little note of asked for other people to think about it. But the topic begins basically as follows. When the pandemic hit, when lockdowns hit, everyone and people were requested to stay home. The city of Minneapolis, along with other cities around the country, initiated some street divisions, parkway divisions, in order to share streets, open up streets to be shared by people doing other than driving. So, and if anybody was out in the last, for as long as they lasted, April, May, June, July, however, you saw them around Lake Harriet, other lakes, Minnehaha Parkway in stretches, River Road. Those were parkways basically split in half, where in a lot of cases it was split in half where vehicle traffic remained one way while the other direction traffic was cut off for purposes of everybody else. So that people could use it without coming into contact with cars. And what was previously and is now again the driving lane going the other direction. Another example of healthy streets around the city were some circulation routes surrounding carving out rectangles of streets in the same fashion, so people could do a couple of 3-mile loop. This was done in the South Minneapolis. I know the South Minneapolis part was done in the low 30s east-west streets and cut off over there. Also saw it on East 40th Street running east of 35W. And in these cases, signs were placed. They ended up staying shared streets, but put up signs at the end of these streets that really discouraged through traffic. I don't know if that completely prevented it, but it definitely kept cars from just running, or any vehicles from just running straight through intersections. So they'd have to really try and swerve around if they were going to intend on going through. I guess the first thing I'd check in with people, and people use the raise your hands or however you want to pipe up. And if people want to, I loved them. I thought they're great. It was just a thrill every time to go down and to exist out on clear streets with a lot of separation and just in new ways. And it was, I I could not get tired of that. Also, that when that was implemented with, this is the last thing I'll say. When it was implemented along with automatic pedestrian recall on those walk signs, it felt like so much ways like a new city, and for purposes of walking it for any length. So I'm interested in hearing other people's experiences with our healthy streets as implemented last year. Good, bad, or otherwise. Do you have anything would like to share?
Yeah, I do. I really love, well, Nokomis, Lake Nokomis was totally without traffic for a period of time, which was the best. We go down there in the late evening, and we go down in the morning and walk down there with our dog. It felt really safe. There were a lot of people, but you weren't right next to them. I did not appreciate as much the shared street, especially on the Parkway, because we'd walk along the Parkway and then cars would come by, and sometimes angry car drivers would come by kind of fast. And if you had a dog and the dog was wandering, it felt a little terrifying. But Nokomis was fabulous. And one of my best memories of the summer was going down this stairway in the evening. It was getting dark, and it was so cool that there was nothing, no cars. It was peaceful. It was just wonderful. So I loved it too. But I just had some feelings about the shared streets. I think they should just shut it off completely, because it was a little terrifying if you were walking, if you had an animal.
Sure. Thanks, Barb.
Yep.
Who else? Just incidentally, Abigail, sort of on that sort of like and speaking to the initiative of closing off streets, at least a couple years ago, that was happening on Lagoon Avenue over on segments of late nights at Lagoon around Hennepin. Has that persisted, or?
That's a good question. I actually don't know personally if it's persisted. Yeah, I just know that, they was at bar close. They would just close off the portion of Uptown.
They definitely have been through the pandemic, at least closing off Hennepin. And I'm assuming that they may also be closing off Lagoon. But I think ever since the National Guard started arriving, it seems like periodically there's barricades that have been put up to close Hennepin. But I don't know how that compares to what you saw on Lagoon, Abigail, knowing you've seen both. In the case of Hennepin, it seems like there's been patrol people there, which seems different than the way Healthy Streets and operated entirely.
All right, and thanks. And I guess I bring it up just as a different perspective, or to illuminate a perspective on what the initiative what is necessary to affect this kind of a closure, whether it needs to be a program instantiated somewhere, somewhere official, or somewhere bubble up from some policy change below, or just to react to what is an apparent need. And I feel like over there, when it was busy bar time and all that stuff, it acted from MPD or somewhere, whereas it just seen as an apparent acute need. So I bring that up.
Along those lines, Peter, one of the things that I noticed that may have been happening before, but I've never noticed, was individual blocks. It seemed like people were shutting down their own blocks using all sorts of different barricades in a way that kind of mimicked the Healthy Streets. That it was relatively temporary, but these were definitely streets that were not, as far as I know, there was no permission that was granted for them. They were all, the ones that I saw happened to be in like Kingfield area. I'm assuming it happened to some extent around the city, and it seems to have continued where there's been non-sanctioned block parties, essentially, or even just people putting up things to try to keep people from going down their streets.
And
saw that in Corcoran too. Ad hoc traffic circles made from large large trash cans or something shaped like a large trash can. And, to the casual observer, it wasn't the prettiest thing, but it didn't endanger anybody, and for sure it gave somebody a driver to something to think about and navigates at a slower pace.
Yeah, I felt very conflicted about it because it was both. I appreciated seeing people do it, but it was, very much in low density residential areas where it seemed to be there's some level of what's probably a positive entitlement, but definitely still entitlement for feeling like you have the right to do that on the street that you live on. And I can't imagine that anything I would put on Hennepin would last terribly long. And we certainly have seen the city respond very aggressively and violently to street closures on other higher density residential streets that have been, happening for really important reasons. So, but that I assume that somehow people seeing the healthy streets gave some sense of permission. I don't know for sure if that's how people were thinking, but.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thanks for that too, Julia. Another note I had on here on this discussion was even to focus. I guess what we've seen pandemic-wise is that separation has still been important. The surfaces is being agreed upon, or there's some consensus around surfaces being less of an issue. But I guess what I wanted to talk about was where this could really improve Minneapolis. A healthy streets, or healthy winter streets. I've had, people who come from out of town, I see times who've stayed over a winter, have remarked to me time and time again. And so it's like, it's just, they're just amazed at, like, as soon as the weather turns the least bit nice, it's like how many people just like compared to just like descend on the streets, like everybody's out of their house. Where I've seen other healthy streets initiatives happening, like I've seen it in person in Austin, Texas, where it continues, and it needs to, because their sidewalks are narrow when they're there, they're broken up when they're there, but mainly they're just not there. So they've used a shared street, much like East 40th was last year. Just for an example, was that through traffic is allowed, parking is allowed, deliveries are allowed, everything else is allowed, but there are significant not barriers, but impediments and signs at the end, at the edges of these segments. Let's go. So relating that to winter is like if the winter, the best chance anybody has in the winter is to find bare pavement is out on our streets. That's true. That's true everywhere. Anywhere, Minneapolis or suburbs or anything. Is I guess the cities and suburbs, the cities are designed to already prepared to clear streets curb to curb. So therefore, they're going to get bare faster than anything, and they'll drain better generally. We've had some exceptions to that in the last few winters with freeze thaw. Anyway, so I'm glad Matthew's here, and just to talk about maybe reflect back a little bit about what is possible. What is the best way to pursue something like this? If we agree, if we agree that let's call it a winter healthy streets that designed to get more people outside, get more people feeling safer walking in, not necessarily just the healthy standpoint, but just getting from place to place. Do you have any thoughts or feelings on that, Mr. Deardahl?
Can I double check? And then I know Abigail seemed like she was trying to get into. So if you want to, after I'm done, jump in. But I'm not tracking the connection between Stay Healthy Streets and winter. Can you help me understand that?
Yep. The concept.
The question.
Are you asking me? If that?
Yes.
Similar in that we would be pursuing a shared, a way to pursue a shared street environment. So that is, and why it relates to winter is because that's where it's going to, that's where the pavement's going, that's where the pavement is going to be bare. More, in my feelings, more continually bare and more quickly bare after after any given, snow or ice event.
Designed to drain.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm just gonna say I still don't quite understand. So there's nothing.
Matthew, can I just jump in?
Yes, please.
Quickly? So to maybe give you some more context too, when we were talking at the PNP agenda setting meeting, one thing we really wanted to know is, we've heard from you at least once or twice, stay healthy streets, like on the city side, aren't going to happen again. They were a big expense. They weren't a total success, and they're over. Like, and you kind of were like, no one's pursuing it. No one's talking about it. It's not happening. One of the things we really want to know is, why is no one talking about it? Why do they feel like the ones that they did during the pandemic didn't work? And why won't they do a postmortem on why they didn't work? You know what I mean? Like, we want to know where the city was, or did the city just go like, wow, that was a mess, and then drop it and run away? Like, we want to know why the city didn't go. Let's pick this up and examine what worked and what didn't, and why we're choosing to not do it again. Because I think the PAC would like to then propose an idea to the city of picking it up again, but in winter. So maybe you can start there.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you. Yes, I think, Peter, between what you said and what Abigail said, I think I understand more now. So thank you for that. So here's what I'll start. When we initially, from the city sides, started to pursue the Stay Healthy Street option, it was sort of in conjunction with roughly at the same time that the park board was. They were ahead of us a little bit on an emergency timeline, and the context of the installation was a raging pandemic that we had no idea like what the implications were, right? And so the idea is we wanted to give people space around the city to not be directly next to somebody, and have the opportunity for physical activity out in the street, and maybe not confined to a sidewalk that is that is within a 6-foot distance that was recommended at the time. And so the way we did that was to pay for using a sign company, traffic control devices, along with some other sort of like last minute, like whatever we had lying around kind of materials, to delineate these Stay Healthy Street routes with some signage and traffic control devices. And what we found was that it was very expensive. So it was like a very expensive rental. So we were paying for these traffic control devices to be out in the street. They were getting hit a lot by cars, and it wasn't a sustainable method to do that. And so over the course of the pandemic, as we were like learning how they worked and how they didn't work, we also knew that these types of devices would not hold up in winter at all. Like it would just, they would absolutely not work in the winter. They would, you wouldn't be able to plow the street. It would get hit, damaged. And so we did make a decision to remove them at the end of the winter last year. Now, we did surveys and we talked to a lot of people, and we felt that there was significant demand for traffic calming devices and those types of quick build improvements. And basically we have been trying to take lessons learned from those emergency installations to inform the future investments in Vision Zero type quick build improvements. But so yeah, when I guess when we say we don't plan on doing that again, I don't think the same purpose is there, meaning the emergency nature of the pandemic of that time. But
I mean, the climate emergency is at the same scale, an urgency.
Sure.
So
Sure.
it's there, it just doesn't have the public attention.
Right. So I guess I think I just want to wrap up my I guess response to that with our Vision Zero and quick build improvements are maybe more the route that we are planning to go based on that, rather than some type of reboot of Stay Healthy Streets. Any thoughts on that or discussion? Oh, Peter, you're muted.
Yeah, I appreciate totally what you said, Matthew. It was like, it makes sense, why it would work, why it wouldn't. And, the slings and arrows of putting this kind of equipment out at great expense and to get, abused by passing vehicles and whoever else. And assuming a return to lockdowns and where this would need, what you'd want to mount it again for that reason. I think there's other reasons to do it. And I guess part of what, again, I'm just talking about my own interest. Of what seems important is to move to more a safer pedestrian realm. Means dry pavement in the winter, means people walking, rolling, biking need to move safely on dry pavement. And we are blessed statistically with the most ordered streets, of major cities, in the world. Chicago's number one. Is like, so we have numerous straight parallel streets that run all over the city. Downtown's cockeyed, Tangletown. Other than that, meaning what ordered streets gives the opportunity is to share the streets. It wasn't that long ago, and it's still on the books. I mean, that we'll shut off half the streets all winter long if the snowfall accumulates to a certain degree. So there's, to the extent that is some cockeyed precedent, it is there. It is that we do have there is some will somewhere to some precedent to do this sort of thing. And if it wasn't clear, that's why I kind of am trying to attack it this way. Is that's it? Yeah, called it healthy streets, but it's just really it's just safe streets for people year round. There's a stark difference between how many people move around, walk around our city in the between the good weather and the bad weather, and it need not be such a stark difference. And so I guess that's what if I'm looking for help, it's like how we would help is to get some agreement on PAC that's something we want to pursue, and how, what would be the way, and then help from staff or someone just to point us the way. I don't think we're getting a resolution today, but I would like to come back if people are in agreement and said, and maybe formalize it over some period of time where we can present different ways different cities do it, or different ways we've done it that has worked. And that's all. Barb, you have your hand up, and I.
Well, Matthew had said that there was some, I think you mentioned two ways. The one I heard of, I can't remember the name of it, was quick build was one, and another one, and I didn't know what those would look like. You said that's something that the city is still looking at, and I don't know what that, I'd like to know what that looked like, what that might look like.
And Barb, when I used the word quick build, I was using it in the context of quick build safety improvements that we're doing around the city. And so that's using largely bollard installations and maybe paint, but mostly bollards to do bump out treatments and harden center lines and medians.
Like we tested
things like that.
Chicago Avenue and things like that. That's what you're talking about.
Yeah.
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 Okay.
So what,
and
it seems like
we are continuously trying to ramp up. So.
Okay.
A lot of that presumes that the travel space for pedestrians is a sidewalk, which we know it isn't in the winter for many, many people. So I don't know quite how that fits in with what Peter's talking about, but when we're doing safety improvements that don't increase safety for people who are walking in the street, that seems to be a different path than what Peter's describing.
And I'm actually curious, what winter like specific treatments do you have in mind? I'm not sure if I'm clear on that yet. Like would it be a different winter maintenance technique or
Well,
what is
right now we know how to clear streets, we don't clear sidewalks. So if we decided that every 10th street each way, north and south, was going to be a shared street, we could continue to clear them with the knowledge we have of how snowplows work on streets and the funding that we have. But we would then have a network of streets that people who don't feel comfortable on icy, bumpy sidewalks or can't get over the curb ramps with the windrows, they would then have access to these spaces that are cleared because we'd be clearing them like they're for cars, but then saying this is primarily for people outside of cars. Does that
and just to
sense?
continue that, so it would be a pairing a specific sort of clear the street of snow and ice, and then indicate in some way that it's for ped bike only.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that is an interesting idea. It's challenging. I'll just say, like, for me to think about how we would do that. So I think that's a good question, because the types of things that would, like, just trying to roll with the idea, because it's kind of fresh for me. The types of things that we would do to indicate that the street is closed for ped bike or for cars would also make it really hard to clear it in the efficient way that you described. But
Yeah.
I mean, it's an interesting idea.
That's it.
I like the idea. It's an interesting concept. I have no way of evaluating it here live.
Yeah.
But it's interesting. Yeah.
Well, it is. We spent the first half hour on this, and I didn't know that we wanted to get a resolution on here, but if people can continue to think about it, I want to bring it back, and if particularly on the city side, if anything we brought up today starts germinating any kind of idea or maybe suggestion back to us, we welcome that too when it returns. Is anybody any other thoughts on that before I move us on? Okay. This does kind of lead into winter maintenance, and my mail led into winter maintenance today because I don't know if Barb or anybody else saw in their mail, but that was today. We got our city official notice that reminding us that snow season is coming and what our obligations are. So that postcard came out today, and and Julie and I talking about having this on the agenda today was basically so that it didn't get forgotten. And this is also where I'd like to check in with the people or with our PAC members, anybody else attending, on their experiences and reflections and input on their experiences traveling the city, on foot, or outside of a car in the winter time. We've been so I'll look for any hands on that. We've been blessed with a couple of lower snow winters in a row, relatively free of the accumulations and the mounds at the corners, things like that we've had in some when it gets any kind of a higher snowfall year. Neil, what's things like over in your neighborhood? Ed, you're muted.
In my neighborhood, walking is a living hell. But I'm one of those morons who walks in the street all winter because I'm damned if I'm going to trust anybody to shovel the walk well enough, and hardly any of them do. Of course, I've told that to Steve Mosing at least twice. He's rolled his eyes because that's officially all he can do. That's short of slapping me up the side of the head. But it's so walking. But the great thing is a lot of the side streets are pretty good, so I can go down 37th or 39th. That's usually pretty good. But the same problem all over town. I mean, you either walk in the middle of a bus plagued thoroughfare and get in everybody's way and risk life and limb and actually get where you're going,
Yeah.
or trudge through the sidewalks and every third one is plowed.
And still risk life and limb to get where you're going.
Yeah, no kidding. And then in the bargain, you get to risk life and limb anyway. So it's crappy. I just stopped walking, even though with the but it's barely worth it walking in the winter in this city.
Yeah.
You know, at a hip breaking age.
Okay. Oh, Matt, I saw I didn't see you there, so I'm gonna call on you too. It's like I forget what part of town you're in. You have good boots?
Yeah, I'm in Whittier. I love throwing on my boots and just walking through everything, but I know for my neighbors and a lot of people around, it is not easy walking around in the winter. So yeah, it's pretty bad.
Thanks, man. Well, somebody must love it.
I think Curran does.
I like pretending I'm a mountain goat. I don't like when I got whiplash and, maybe a concussion from falling on sidewalks. I don't like what it does for so many people and how it traps people for months at a time. We have a city where we're supposedly so progressive, but we have a huge portion of our population that literally does not feel safe leaving their homes because of the conditions of our infrastructure, our most basic infrastructure, and that we're not mortifyingly ashamed of it. Is just like, it floors me that we're just okay abandoning disabled and elderly people in particular, and in particular poor people who don't have car access. It is I don't have words to condemn it strongly enough, to that abrogation of our most fundamental communal responsibility to one another to prevent isolation. Like, it's one thing when it's a pandemic, but we've done this for decades, just gone, oh, what? You can't get out in winter? Well, that's on you. No, we're not going to make sure sidewalks are clear. We're going to do nothing. You can use the street and hope people are not harassing you too much. Yeah. And the number of people who are willing or able to do that is just, it's slim, and it kills people very, very literally. Like, we saw that, our own Phil was not able to make it to meetings in the winter because he couldn't count on the sidewalks being clear enough for him to get downtown, to get to City Hall from the North Loop with his electric wheelchair reliably. Like, I'm gonna mute myself again because it breaks me every winter.
Yeah.
And I can get around. Like,
there isn't any. Yeah, appreciate that, Julia, because there isn't anybody who's just one slip and fall away from being in the worst, in that exact same position. And to really join everybody else, right? Join the people who absolutely cannot do it to every other reason. Paul, I saw you popped up there. Are you in a special service district there? Do they shovel the streets around by your place, or?
Well, yeah, downtown, the businesses usually do a pretty good job of clearing their the sidewalks downtown adjacent to their business. So, but they usually have bobcats and the equipment they need to clear the walks. But yeah, I know it's a difficult issue for folks to try to get around, but in order to have the pavement clear and dry and everything, that would just cost a ton of money. And we're in Minnesota, and you're never going to solve the issue. We're going to be able to improve it a bit, but it just depends on how much money you want to spend. And I think the city did a study, what if the city cleared all the sidewalks, it was going to be like, what, 12 million a year, Matthew, something like that. So I'd rather see 12 million spent on more permanent improvements, and traffic calming, pedestrian safety, etc., rather than city putting a lot of money in the snow. There's always room for improvement, but we're not going to be able to solve it.
I totally agree, Paul. Because sidewalks also don't drain. So the city could come by and clear them, and you have one day where the temperatures hover in the upper 20s. You get melt coming across every sidewalk, and it's black ice again. So sidewalks are not infrastructure that even makes sense to treat as infrastructure, let alone spend that kind of money clearing them without addressing the underlying and root causes of the problems with ice and snow on them.
Yeah, true enough. Thanks for that, Paul, too.
I would be curious. One of the things that the city did not do in their winter maintenance study, and there were many, but they did not talk. They didn't try to calculate the cost to the city or to the individuals within the city of falls from snow and ice. And I've been in HCMC for just regular appointments after some of our like an ice event or something, where I've overheard and asked about emergency room visits. And there's definitely a pattern that the doctors that I've talked to have seen in emergency room visits from people who've fallen. And it seems like we talk more about the cost to provide infrastructure for pedestrians than we do. There's just no conversation around what is the cost to the healthcare system. What is the cost? Like, if we just only care about finances, could we somehow capture that? If the city isn't going to find it, could we figure out how to get that information from local hospitals in a way that would be like meaningful data that could be useful to start quantifying this? I've run into so many people who've been out of work for months from falling, who are scared to fall, I had, I think, 4 appointments myself after I got whiplash falling on a sidewalk. And I'm lucky that I have the low income health insurance, so it didn't make me low income from that, but it's such a burden to people to be out of work if you.
We absolutely do pay what it costs. We pay what it costs every year to make sure that a certain segment gets through anywhere they're going. And but at the same time, that leaves other people just completely behind. And I can see why people might, resent one group of people being favored over another. In a reality that faces Minneapolis every year. Anyway, so that's another item on our agenda that we're gonna wrap up having discussed. We just want to make sure, having awaiting city response, we're not gonna. Whatever response we're waiting for, we're still going to bring it up, and just we'll just, because it's real important. It remains super important for a good part of the year, for a good third of the year for everybody who walks, and certainly PAC included. If we have any final comments, yeah, go ahead, Matthew.
I do want to note, I was recently sort of assigned through our team to look at conducting a review of the pedestrian and bicycle winter maintenance study, to update it to kind of reflect what's in TAP, and just kind of like look into developing additional assumptions based on what's in TAP. So that is something that I'm going to lead, and I'll bring that to the committee, I think, fairly soon. It's just like, I just recently learned of this project, and so at some point I just wanted to share that with you today, and I don't know if it'll be next month or the following, but I think this conversation will continue.
Fantastic. God, that's great to hear, Matthew. I'm glad it's happening. I'm glad it's you. Any other anybody else want to close out the subject before we move on? Because we have I've got Chris Kartheiser, Minneapolis Public Works, with our CIP, Capital Improvement Program, PAC priorities topic. Chris, welcome.
Yeah.
Hello.
Thanks, Peter. And definitely looking to you and Julia as co-chairs today to help kind of guide how this is going. I think today we have a relatively, I'll just say, I think we're still at a high level at this point for the year. And so maybe like some brainstorming and just kind of thinking of like how we want to address the CIP this year. We did talk about this a couple months ago already, but didn't go into too much detail or have a bunch of time. I don't know that we even pulled up the resolution. I can't remember. And then next month we will have our CIP team for sure. That's all booked on the calendar now. For the November PMP, Mike Samuelson will come. So I think today, again, like, I've already had some conversations with Mike about like what to bring to this group as well as the BAC and what folks generally ask for or other like questions. Getting a little bit of background noise, but so anyways, one other piece today that I'm looking for from all of you is just like questions you might have specifically for the CIP team, if they need to like prepare an answer in advance. I think we did some of that maybe last time as well, but I guess to start, I would like to just pose to the group, and I'm interested to hear everyone's take on this. If you have a take on this, please speak up, of just kind of like how to start this process this year in terms of, obviously we put a lot of work into the resolution last year and in years prior, and we've kind of built, typically kind of build the resolution based on like a starting point of the previous year's resolution. I'm happy to do that. So that's one option, if we can do that, and we can kind of go through section by section even today as much as we have time and say like, here's the goals. Any comments, like we can just throw in, jot in things for stuff to look at, add, think about, and then like move section by section. Or another option would be to kind of start from scratch and just go around the room and hear what everybody's thinking as far as what they'd like to see this year, things that they'd like to prioritize, or questions that they have, or if there's any other ideas about how to go about this today. Generally, I'm open to that. So I thought I'd just give those options, and then I can help kind of facilitate as much as needed or wanted, depending on if what thoughts we get.
Maybe a bigger question is, what kind of influence is the IPCC having on the CIP overall so far?
I think that's a good question that I can pass on to the CIP team. And I'll say, like, directly, my guess is that directly the IPCC report hasn't been like what that group has looked to try to interpret to then translate to the CIP, if that makes sense. I think more so probably what they've been doing is looking to our policy guidance through TAP that's been updated since the last CIP, and applying that and any environmental thing with that. But I think it's a fair question to bring up the
Okay.
IPCC. So
And that was,
go ahead.
if I'm understanding correctly, I think those most recent TAP, like, they're just not keeping pace with the rate of like physical breakdown of our planet. So if that one was behind for the 2018, like by the time the TAP was passed, it was not in alignment with the science of 2018. So it's even further behind with the intensification in what we're seeing. So, okay. That I think helps to know that conversation maybe is not definitely happening. So the reason I asked was because we often are trying to figure out how to raise issues, but hopefully at some point we're also not the ones raising the issues. Like, at some point the city will be taking the science seriously, and we will be able to sort of move into really our fundamental role of advising on within sort of the solutions around those issues. But we're having to do double duty right now, given that, like, denialism built into city structures, it seems.
I think that's a fair thing to bring up. Thanks. Abigail?
Yeah, my one question was, 2 years ago, our program recommendation for money for Vision Zero projects, right? A program was built off of Did any of these 5 make it in to the CIP process?
I lost you for a second. Abigail, sorry, could you go right after, could you just repeat the whole question, actually?
Yes, we won the Vision Zero program 2 years ago because of our resolution. Did anything this year in this resolution that we're looking at right now go through for the CIP?
Yeah, we can just look at it right now, and Matthew, I'll look for some of your help on this, but I would say number one here, creating a program to add benches, public restrooms, drinking fountains, etc., is not. I don't believe in the CIP. Number two, create a form. Go
Chris,
for it,
maybe
Matthew.
as we go to, okay, but
Yeah.
that's probably more of a systems change, I think, in how we deliver projects and scope. And I'll note that in the transportation action plan, we make note of that. Those items, including bike racks, which isn't on here, I don't think, but so that is something that I think is in TAP, and we can double check at the specific language.
I thought benches did not make it into TAP.
You know, that's a good thing. I see Chris taking notes live as we go. Let's double check what TAP says in there. I thought it did, but
I
good
would
question.
love to be wrong, so hopefully I'm so cranky that I
Okay.
stayed in cranky head.
Okay, cool.
Well,
We'll check on that.
Yeah, it may be. There may be other things within this whole one that aren't. So yeah, we can check on that. And then number two, create a formal program for crisis response using low cost materials. As far as I know, Matthew, add in, aside from the Vision Zero stuff that I don't think this is talking about, we have not done that.
I think that's correct. And also when Mike attends next month for the CIP, I think he'll have more, more to say on each of these. But yes, we have not created a formal plan for that, or formal program, I mean.
Well, if Mike's going to come next month, he could also answer this if he knows more. But maybe that's a question just to make sure to pose to him, like tear this apart and like really give us answers.
Sure. Yeah, I know we've asked them to do that in the past, and I think we can ask them.
Because a lot of these are holdovers from 2 years ago, and we decided we wanted to keep them. Some are new, some are edited, but we want to know if we can like take one off or whatever.
Yep.
Or like if this is not working anymore as a way to do it.
Cool.
Right.
So that last thing seemed like maybe like a separate piece to add. Like, is this method working?
Well, I mean, I think we should ask ourselves that after we get answers from Mike.
Okay, so that wasn't as much a question for Mike as internal facing, depending on the results from Mike.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Cool.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks.
I love that framing though, Abigail. That's a really good question for the PAC to consider.
In planning this meeting, talking about this, the topics here, with where we're going to come back to the IPCC report, what we were going to talk about next, I think will apply here. That isn't coming up with some more, I don't know, for lack of a better word, strident language as regards the breaking climate emergency and where we need to fall. We're going to talk about it for our resolutions, where we're going to put it how we can put it in a standard place in our resolutions, but it's certainly I would expect it to be more centered here too in this effort.
Any other folks have questions or kind of topics that they want to throw into the mix for us to consider as we're going through this?
I just really hope that Steve can speak fully to to the IPCC report with some at least cursory knowledge of what it entails and how that applies to the CIP and the process we're part of.
Peter, it looks like you're saying something, but I believe you're muted.
That's okay. Thank you. So Mike's expected for sure in November, we think?
Yep,
Okay.
definitely. I confirmed that with him this past week.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, and so I think like some of this can maybe just wait until after that. Obviously, what Abigail had said there is like based on Mike's response about how some of these previous year resolutions I can kind of influence the approach for this year from the PAC, and if there's a desire to change that at all based on what might be looked at as a success of getting some of these ideas implemented or not, but. Yeah, we don't have to spend more time if there's not other thoughts out there about kind of like how to handle this process or anything like that. I'm happy to just turn it back over to the next agenda item. But in the meantime, over the next month, if anyone has any thoughts, feel free to reach out to me, and I can get more questions or specific things for Mike and them to consider in their presentation. And Julia, you had something?
The only other thing I would be kind of curious about is what we got sent from our last presentation in IME last Thursday. I believe whoever it was that clarified, I think it was you, said it was something that's used within the CIP, and I'm wondering if there might be insight that we could get from looking over that or other samples of that.
Oh, the capital budget request is what it's called. Yes. So I mean, we can include that. Like if that's, I think what I'm hearing is like maybe a walkthrough of like how to use that as a resource and like where that stuff lives and like how to look at it. Is that kind of what you're asking, Julia?
Yeah. It seemed like Christopher might have been pulling some information from it. I was trying to keep up with the presentation, and so I wasn't really looking at it and haven't. But yeah, it seems like that might be something that at least some members of the PAC could get additional insight from, and the CIP can be kind of nebulous. So
totally. Yeah, we can definitely do that. What I can do is even if Mike isn't planning on like going through those as part of his presentation, I'll attach that resource so that at least you can like start looking through that, and then either we'll have time like after Mike's presentation and maybe after he leaves where like we can go through that if it's helpful to the conversation, or like in a later month during this year's CIP process. So like December or something like that, we could dig more into it if there's still a desire.
I would lean towards the second. I wouldn't want to use up my time with something that isn't critical, because I feel like we do have a lot of questions for him besides that. But for you and Matthew to share what how that works within the CIP process at a later meeting would be great.
Awesome. That sounds good. Thanks for that.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. Thanks, Saul. And moving on, our last item is the aforementioned IPCC resolution follow-up. A couple of things we talked about leading into this meeting was one, just kind of again ask Chris and Matthew as regards our climate resolution, have any input or insight or comments on how it's landed back on the city side? We asked about the CIP component a moment ago, but in general, anything you think we'd like to know?
You know, I don't know that I have anything specific. Chris and I had a conversation at our all staff meeting you know, with them, and gave them a heads up on what you said, and I think it was generally framed as like, know that this is coming, and also like let us know if we can help with that, and if you have questions. So it was more the awareness piece that I think you all wanted. I guess.
Have you been sharing that prior to each? Sorry.
Go ahead, Julia.
Have you been giving that information or our initial statement to each presenter ahead of their presentation?
I haven't done that specifically, no. It was more like letting them know to expect to have that question and be prepared to discuss it.
And more as sort of a broad statement, not a per presentation statement.
Correct, I would say.
I thought we passed, and this is just sort of a getting my head on straight and then figuring it out. But I thought we had a piece that we had written that was specific to be given to each presenter ahead of coming to our meeting, so that they would be reminded of that and hopefully address it on their own.
Yeah, no, that's a good question. I think thinking out loud, and Chris jump in too, but I'm not sure if I interpreted that as every individual before it comes, or like a heads up to the team with your specific language, which we did. So I don't know.
Well, and so I think one thing that we talked about was like adding that to the presentation guide so people know that. And so we haven't done that. So I appreciate you bringing that up, Julia. We can commit to doing that.
Awesome.
For sure. And we don't, the way it happens now, we don't send that to people every single time. We send that out to folks, let them know where it lives, and send that up like, I don't know, every 6 months. I just kind of do like a reminder of like the entire process of like how to sign up for meetings, like all the stuff a lot of stuff that you all don't have to see kind of on the back end. But so we do regularly get that back in front of people, and then like new people that start at the city, and then I'll make like another effort to include that, especially with like agency partners that present at our meetings, and just get that in the habit of sending that as well, just so that it's popping up kind of regularly for folks that are coming to the committee.
If you're not at the 6-month reminder, and even if you are, would you be able to send it out to everybody with this is a thing that's been added, like a high level, you might not read all of this, but this is the key big change coming your way?
I think definitely, since we'll be like updating the presentation guide, it makes sense whether it's 6 months or not. And frankly, I don't keep track of it as like, it's been 6 months, I'll do exactly that. I have no problem sending it out right now, just because it's relevant with this conversation.
Perfect. So. And I think that this is why we put it on the agenda, just to sort of check in, since there's a lot that we request of all of you, and making sure that we're keeping track of what is going on.
Yeah, I appreciate it, and we will get on that.
Okay, I was going to try and screen share that real quick, but it was just a two sentence memo that we had published and passed in August to go to the to add to that city staff direction. So I imagine that's part of the package you're talking about. Talking about now, just requesting that each presentation include that, and speak to the IPCC and climate specifically. Right.
Yep, and just so folks know, if you're not familiar with the presentation guide, it just has like at 0%, like give us the general overview, engagement, yada yada. At 30%, give us this, and like that they might ask for a resolution and things like that. So it'll be part of kind of that suite of information.
Thanks. All right.
Would you be able to share that with the members, just because that's something that we did work on, and
yeah,
it might be helpful for everyone to see?
Definitely. Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. The other part of this, last part of our agenda was to talk about begin drafting standardized clauses or phrases for our infrastructure resolutions, to speak directly to, to have each resolution on infrastructure projects speak to the climate component.
So that was something that had come up. It's been coming up kind of periodically as with some of the things that we see repeatedly, having language that we can use again and again. And I know that with our climate work specifically, that's something that we've talked about, is how to capture the urgency of a scale and style of change that isn't what we are being presented with. So that isn't being lost when we're giving resolutions that have detail for projects that just are not commensurate with what we're facing. And boilerplate language that captures that, so that we're not struggling to write it each time, since it seems like it might not, the shift may still be percolating and not where we're seeing it yet.
Julia, what do you think that would, I guess from a, trying to think of how to put this, what is the best tack to take for if we're going to be using same or similar language across infrastructure projects? What's the best tack to take on the climate breakdown, tenet? Is it we know if we know the projects are measuring up or not, or
that's what I'm not sure about, and maybe it's something where like our verb tense could escalate over time, or I know I've discussed it. It's come up where I've heard Abigail weigh in on it. I feel like Neil kind of does this in meetings sometimes, where it'll go from that big picture, like this is not addressing the problem, and then kind of that said, within the game you've laid out to play, which is not the game we should be playing, here's our feedback. I don't know what would help it get taken seriously. Like I'm really puzzling over the lack of, and I'm not maybe in the right spaces to be hearing it, but I don't know what conversation is resonating or how that is being framed or what helps us to be taken seriously, and to push that conversation and some of what we discussed previously, to encourage those who maybe also are not seeing conversations happen to start really pushing for those to happen where they are, so that if we're pushing up as the almost entirely powerless pedestrian advisory committee, the slightly more powerful but still almost entirely powerless city planners are able to do whatever they need to do to push that up to the managers or whatever the chains of command are, to get the policy shifts that we need and to get the scale and scope of change that we need. Which I don't think that answered your question, Peter. So I'm really sorry.
No. It certainly it answers it better than I asked it, because you're talking about it. Planners trying to push up. Here we are trying to. It seems so. It is a frustrating place to be. That it should somehow come feelings that it somehow come feeling solely that these are our ideas, right? Here's what we were thinking, when it feels like it should be people who have the actual authority to make these changes, do so. That we should have to rehash it every time about basic climate truths. It's just the longer I think about it, I don't know. I don't know.
I have to say, as always,
yeah, Neil.
I have to say that the city, if it's serious about preventing catastrophe, if that's what we're looking for, this is not a what do you call it, click deal, but they've got to ratchet up the PR. You absolutely have to say to
Mm-hmm.
the 85% of people in this city who don't give a damn about climate change, or at least they're driving as though they didn't.
Yeah.
We need to get you out of your damn car. We also need to change everything. Sorry if that fucks up your life, but that's how it's going to be worse if you don't. We need them, and that's not something we're talking about putting into the CIP. Obviously, that's something every day they're going to say, look, if you don't believe this stuff, your kids will curse you for it. They'll hate you for not treating them seriously enough to change the way we do stuff. But the city hasn't done a damn thing about climate change advertising. Mike gets on and tells us to move our cars. Great, I don't have one, and that's a good thing. But we aren't convincing anybody beyond the 15% that don't have an axe to grind where cars are concerned that they ought to care. And that's not going to, the agenda's not going to move real fast if the city council doesn't hear people with cars knocking on their doors and calling their aides and saying, what the hell are you doing this year?
Right.
We got to get those people, the Newland Hills, I always pick on them because by law I have them going to Andrea Jenkins and everybody else and saying, okay, this year you ratcheted up 10 more percent. Or you're out of office, pal. It's got to be that stark. I mean, you just have, because of course other issues get that exact treatment.
Yeah, I heard that.
As Julie's answer was, is, not per the agenda, but that's what we've got to do as far as I'm concerned. We are not moving any faster.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And and I appreciate that, Neil. And it's like, and I've to the extent I took us down this road, I regret it. And that we're not. This is, what you say is absolutely true, and it's, it needs to be restated because it's, because it was true today and it was true a month ago and it's true a year ago, and for all and we don't know any signs. If we say it's going to be true a month from now or a year from now, what is that? So where does that? What is our best? What is our best? Admittedly, our well-informed, how do we take our well-informed membership and apply that to language that affects that can meaningfully improve our resolutions and meaningfully point to the climate breakdown.
Well, what Neil raises makes me wonder if this is almost maybe putting it in the language of the resolutions isn't as good as doing rotating ownership of some language that we use as we pass resolutions and reach out to council members, or just our goal is to advise the city, and we can see pretty clearly that our advice is rarely taken, and certainly not any bits that maybe weren't already there, or extremely rarely. So if our words, we need to figure out how to be louder rather than shift our words in some ways. That language is there, and maybe it's if the resolution isn't reaching who it needs to, or if the attitudes are needing to shift more than they are, how do we make more of a ruckus so that as an advisory committee it works?
Yeah, that's the problem. Raising a ruckus.
I would listen.
I like a good ruckus.
Mm-hmm. I mean, is that something what would it take for us to be able to talk to the city comms people and find out why there's a snow emergency Twitter account, but not one for, say, any other mode?
And we nailed their hides to the cross. Abigail, and meaning Abigail and our colleague in the bicycle committee.
Alyssa.
They went on, Alyssa, they just went in there and said, look, no holds barred, you're screwing up. They as much as said, you're incompetent pieces of garbage, and we need to change this. I mean, they didn't read it that way, I hope, because they're well-meaning people, and God bless them. But they aren't doing the work, and we said so. And if that didn't galvanize them a little bit, then it's obviously not a priority. But you have to keep doing that, I suppose, is what Julia's talking about, which I would agree with.
Well, we're talking internally. I think what you brought up, Neil, is an excellent point, and it's something that has come up around the Healthy Streets, is that it showed people like that the streets are space beyond just for cars, and there's been overflow changes from that. But how do we, if advising the city staff and city elected officials is not landing, then it seems like the voice, maybe we try to figure out how it goes external.
Mm-hmm. Which would be ticklish for an advisory committee that's by law or whatever our ordinance is designed to speak to the council at the highest and not to the city, to our fellow citizens.
Is it designed to be ignored?
Well,
I mean, are we just serving? Is it a honorary position essentially with no actual? I know that it's not. There's no power, but are we just here so that things don't look as bad as they are?
Right. So if we want to ratchet up our game, we have to speak directly to our fellow citizens, and it's, I don't know, is that beyond our competence? I don't know. We may be.
I mean, we've seen. I think Abigail co-wrote. Well, I'm not sure in what capacity, but a letter to the editor, strip editorial. We've seen some of that previously. We used to occasionally have journalists come to some of our meetings. There's communicating what we do and being transparent about our role vis-a-vis climate breakdown to the general public doesn't seem like it's a complete misstep. It might be a sidestep towards an advisory committee role, but I think we could make a fairly strong case that for whatever reason, our advisory capacity is not being heard. And it's on us to some extent to make sure that it is heard, because we're saying things that are absolutely critical, over and over, like the winter maintenance stuff, benches.
Yes, right.
Literally. Yeah.
Anyway,
It's all taken. Where do we go with this? I feel like boilerplate or something that just says climate on every resolution will quickly be, to the extent it's ever in the first place,
mind numbing. Yeah,
it's gonna be skipped right over, kind of like our limbs. But things that look as automatic or like boilerplate. I mean, I guess maybe I'm speaking for nobody other than myself, but I will tend to quickly overlook them. Like a signature line on an email, right, or something like that. So how do we make this? I guess I know that's what we're talking about here. It's like how we make this, how do we make it unignorable? So how are we best making it unignorable? And I feel like it's specific. It's being specific in every resolution, specifically the plans.
Challenge.
I'll just add something in of like I don't know that because each resolution is targeted towards a different person and like a different project manager, even if it's boilerplate, I don't think that it will just be overlooked. I think people really do like look at those for what they mean and what they're intended, and whether or not that changes the project or not, obviously that's up to them on how they interpret it. But I do think it's a good first step to like come up with some language like that, and it's not as useless as an email signature. I'll say that.
That's my lesser angel, and I guess I would be happy. I think we will have achieved something, even if the readers are just going, what are they on about? There they are again. What is there on? There they are out there. What is it with the pack and all this? There they go again. I mean, that would be progress. I think. We achieve that, not just on our side.
And we're already at that point with winter maintenance, I'm sure, because that is what we go on about from October to May. That's inevitably because it doesn't change much.
I would wonder if we could put something in that has a specific call for action. Almost this project is not aligned with scientific knowledge per the IPCC 2021 report. We understand that there may be like somehow saying that what we've said before of if you as the project planners here cannot do this, part of your actions needs to be pushing it up the line. that it is not enough to say, oh, we can't do it, funding sources or whatever it is. Like, it needs to keep being escalated, and to have some sort of actionable style request that is part of it.
Yeah. I like the sound of that. If not for the project at hand, that they're taking responsibility or asked to take the responsibility for moving the need to the decision maker, or the overruler, or the veto, or whoever. Oh, thanks, Julia.
So for the people who haven't weighed in, I feel like there's a couple of us who keep speaking on this. Any thoughts? I am not able to see who's in the meeting, but.
Yeah, sure. We have Matt and Barb and Paul. And
I have some thought. I think it's important, and we don't do this very well. And I think that becomes partly from passion, that the things we write tend to be long and over detailed, in my opinion. And that if we really want to have an impact, I was a director and I used to write board reports to my board, and I was passionate, so they were long and detailed, and they almost never read them thoroughly. And they would come back to me 3 months later and say, well, how many families did we serve? And I'd say, well, it was in that report I gave you just a month ago. If you'd read it, you'd know. But they didn't read it. So I think brevity is the power that we have. When we want to say something, we need to be concise and clear and brief, because people don't ignore something that they can read in a couple of minutes, but they will look at something that's long and detailed, and they will scan over it and ignore it. If we want to have an impact, I think we have to be brief and concise and clear. And that's my opinion.
Yeah, I agree.
Excellent.
And it's got to be almost soundbite-ishly memorable.
It's got to be what, Neil?
Sound memorable, like a soundbite.
Yeah.
You know.
I mean, as crappy as politics are, that's why they use those, because
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
And they don't make long speeches because people tune out. They say something quickly and briefly and clearly, and it has some passion in it.
Right.
And it's really hard to edit when you're passionate. When we're this concerned, it's hard to keep editing, but that's what we have to do, in my opinion.
Completely agree.
Me three. And we'll welcome any other comments.
Oh my.
All right.
Anyway.
So it sounds like, to me, please correct me, is that, that we're gonna tackle this on a with the upcoming resolutions that are not necessarily ready right now, but right to the next resolution. We'll take that up. We'll take it up then. Does that sound right?
That sounds good. And maybe just being able to remind ourselves of what Barb said, because we can try a couple of different things and then, see what's starting to sound good.
Yep.
Pithy.
All right. Penny, any more comments on that topic? I think we're wrapped on that. And that brings us to the end of the agenda, which brings us to any announcements that are needed. I was going to mention that postcard, but I already did that. We got our look for the gentle postcard from the city that the city of Minneapolis sends out for about what's expected about clearing your walks and clearing around your trash bins and things like that, and that to being a good neighbor and avoiding tickets on. And it does mention in passing that tickets citations are a possible consequence of not. So I'm glad everybody have gotten that. I know certain people. I know Barb has mentioned it's helped. I just thought that notice has helped around the neighborhood. Yeah, I can't really tell.
It has on my block. I'll just say, when they got that letter, a lot of people started shoveling that hadn't been shoveling, especially younger people. I think the old people all shovel because we're all scared to death we're going to fall down. But the younger people, they're not as afraid, so they forget about it. They're busy and they're running their lives. And it really had an impact, I think, in my block, which I appreciated.
Yeah, good. Yeah. Anybody else have announcements before I just take us all down got call out Steve Mawald here and ask him all sorts of D-line questions? That wouldn't be appropriate here. So fill up with announcements.
I want to hear it.
Wait, I'm sorry.
My question is, hurry.
You're going to drive it right through the zone.
No, I'm Beeline questions, Peter. I'll have to direct you to someone else.
No, that's fine. That's fine. I just wanted to say hello.
Okay.
And I will keep everybody here if there are no announcements. I want to get us adjourned and on our ways. So anything, and one last round. Anybody got anything to add? Looking for hands. Looking for activated mics. 3, 2, 1. All right. Thanks, everyone. Good attendance. I really appreciate everybody's participation and discussion and ideas and brains today. Thanks. Thank you, one and all. And we're PNP adjourned.